Hello and welcome to EGM722, Week 1, Part 5, A Brief Introduction to Git. So what is Git? It is a distributed version control system, or DVCS. A version control system is just a tool that helps us to record changes to files over time. It is distributed in that each copy of the thing that we're keeping track of is independent and also has the complete history of the project up to that point. So Git is a software that started with programming or started with keeping track of software projects, but it's not limited to programming or software applications. You can use Git to keep track of pretty much anything. It enables you to see the entire timeline of your project from the very beginning all the way up until now. You can also keep track of the changes that you have made along the way and also why you have made those changes along the way. And it helps you to more easily collaborate with others because it's easier to keep track of what changes are being made and when, and so putting your work back together becomes a little bit easier. So why are we trying to learn version control at the same time that we're learning programming skills? Well, because this kind of thing is actual nightmare fuel. With a version control system, we hopefully avoid things like this, or at least with our code, because again, version control helps us to record snapshots of a project over time. We get to keep track of what changes are being made and why, and we can go back and undo those changes if we need to. Doing it with something like this is going to be a lot harder. So the first sort of word that we will learn in this introduction to Git is a repository, which is really just the storage space for our particular project. You've already seen this when you went to get set up for this module by going to GitHub and cloning or forking and then cloning the repository for this course. You see that the repository contains the files as well as past versions and all of the different branches that exist within the project. This project at the moment at least only has a single branch, so that's all you get. Any folder on your computer can be turned into a Git repository using the command git init from the command line. So if you want to start keeping track of other things, you can use Git to help you do that. I generally recommend not using this for things like Word documents because there's some weird formatting that gets done, but text files, data files, other things like your programming scripts, these are all things that you can try to keep track of using Git. So the next word or term that we will cover is something called a commit. And a commit is just a snapshot of the project. It's the different save points that we make along the way. On the GitHub page for this course, if you look at the top of the file list, there will be a little button called commits that you can see. You can click on that and you can see all of the different commits that have been made to the repository up to that point, and they should all have a different message that explains what is being done at each step. They also have a unique identifier called a hash that you can see the abbreviation of the hash here. There's a full text and number string that's quite long that actually is what Git is using to identify what changes have been made to your repository along the way. And again, they should also have, each of the different commits should also have a message that describes what is being done, and it can be very short. You can also potentially have much longer commit messages if you are making significant changes to the code at each step. Another concept that we'll start to cover in this module is something called branches. So often we want to develop different things at the same time, either because we have different people working on the project, or maybe we have different features that we want to test out and work on without actually breaking the main code. So we can use something called a branch to help to do this. So this is just an independent development line. So if we look at a graph representation of our history of our project, we see each of the different nodes are commits, and we see time going down this way. So starting from the very earliest commit, at least in this snapshot that we're looking at, moving to the latest commit. So again, one example that we might want to use a branch for is to make sure that we're not breaking everything while we're working on and developing and testing a new feature. So we create a feature branch in order to work on that. The main branch of our code remains unchanged as we're going along, and maybe there's some changes that are being made from other branches. And then once we are done and happy and satisfied that our feature branch is ready to be included in the main branch of the code, then we can merge the feature branch back to the main branch and then continue developing as we go. So this is a little bit more advanced than we might get into in this module, but this is something that if you start to work on programming projects with other people, this is something that you're going to want to learn very well. And there's a number of different tutorials that I've linked to on the course page at the end of this presentation as well that can help you to learn some of these concepts in a bit more detail. So the last thing that I want to cover is that GitHub is not the same as Git. Git, again, is a distributed version control system. It's the main software that we're using in order to keep track of changes to our different coding projects. GitHub is a popular website that is used to host Git repositories. There are others, including GitLab and Bitbucket, that are out there. GitHub, I think, is by far the most popular, but it's definitely not the only one. And then the other software that we've included, or that will use in this module is GitHub Desktop, which just provides a graphical user interface for GitHub, not for Git. So we need to also make sure to install Git if you haven't actually done that already. So to sum all of this up, Git, again, is a tool that helps us keep track of changes in files over time. Each different project or group of files that we're working with is stored in something called a repository that includes all of the files as well as the history of those files, so how they've changed over time. We keep track of the changes that we're making using something called a commit, which you can think of as just a save point for your project. And finally, GitHub is a very popular website for hosting Git repositories separate from the software, which again is called Git. So some additional resources here. There's a number of links to different manuals on Git, including just a brief introduction, the Git handbook, something called Understanding the GitHub Flow, and some different videos on YouTube that you can go check out. There's also this tutorial that I've linked to called Learn Git Branching, which is a really good interactive tutorial that can help you to learn some of the more nuanced features of Git. And you can also go check out this workshop page for a project called Code Refinery to learn a little bit more about using GitHub without using the command line, if that's a little bit too much new information for you at this time. So that's all I have for this lesson. I hope you found it useful and interesting, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to post them in the discussion forum on Blackboard. Thanks. Bye.